Hey, some more packages arrived today. What's in them?
Oh, those? Fishing gear. A colleague at work invited me to go fishing, so I bought some new stuff.
Fishing gear? I feel uneasy seeing my husband Hugo's excitement. Didn't you buy fishing gear when we first got married and never used it?
I was too busy to go, but that old gear is outdated, and if I'm going, I need new stuff.
I see.
What's up? You got a problem with that?
It's not that, but
my colleague was kind enough to invite me. I can't just say no. I have work, you know. I can't just dwell on sentiment like you do.
I understand what Hugo is saying, but it's hard to believe we're a couple sharing the same sorrow when Hugo seems so happy, like nothing has happened. I'm Cynthia, 33 years old. We've been married for 6 years. Hugo was making these fishing plans just 2 months after our daughter passed away. I still can't get over my grief, but I can't understand how Hugo seemed so unaffected. Father-in-law Wilson passed away in our 2nd year of marriage. He adored his granddaughter, loved her more than anything. I wonder if they're together in heaven now. That's the only thought that comforts me. Before he died, "Don't let Hugo and mother-in-law Rachel handle the money," Wilson told me. I realized after getting married that Hugo and Rachel are big spenders. They spend without thinking if they have money. That's why Wilson always managed the finances. Wilson was a gentle soul, always looking out for me. Having no family of my own, he was like a real father to me, and his death hit me hard. Our daughter Laura was born a year after our marriage. She was such a bright and cheerful girl, always bringing light into our lives.
Mom, everyone's so jealous of my packed lunch. I bet it's the best in preschool.
Then Mom will have to try even harder.
Mom, can I ask for a little favor?
What is it?
Can you make more food for my next packed lunch? I want to eat more.
Can you eat that much?
I won't leave any, I promise.
Okay, I'll do it. The following month, Laura's preschool teacher quietly told me something. There was a child in class who never had a mom and whose dad was too busy with work to make a packed lunch, always bringing just a supermarket sandwich and an apple. Laura had been sharing her packed lunch with this child.
Laura's packed lunch is more than I can eat, so please help me eat it.
Splitting it in half. Hearing this, I was so proud of Laura. Such a kind and wonderful child. Every expression of Laura's, her angry face, her crying face, and her brightest smiles were all treasures to me. And then one day, that treasure was suddenly gone. The night before, Laura went to bed as usual, just a bit earlier than normal.
I'm sleepy,
she said, but I just thought she was tired from preschool. After watching Laura start to breathe softly in her sleep, I left the bed. Usually, Laura and I sleep together. After Laura fell asleep, I cleaned up dinner, took a shower after Rachel did, finished cleaning the shower room, and by the time I returned to the bedroom, it was almost midnight. Hugo was away on a business trip that night. Laura was lying quietly in bed. I thought she was sleeping well, but as I was about to get into bed, I noticed something was wrong. I couldn't hear Laura's breathing. What? I reached out to touch Laura's cheek. It was noticeably colder than usual. Laura? Laura! What's wrong? Laura! Laura was completely unresponsive. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I knew I had to call an ambulance. I jumped into the ambulance with Laura, but as soon as the paramedics saw her, they had a look on their face. They rushed her to the hospital. Laura, you'll be okay, right? You'll get better once we're at the hospital, right? I held Laura's cold hand, repeating the same words to myself. But the first thing the doctor said when we arrived was, "I'm terribly sorry, but she's already..." I became frantic. I begged the doctor to examine Laura over and over. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't happen like this. She was fine before bed. The cause was unknown.
These sudden events can happen even with small children these days,
the doctor said. I had heard such things but never imagined it could happen to my own child. Laura and I had only lived together for 4 short years. I thought we had decades ahead of us. I couldn't believe she was suddenly gone. I panicked and passed out. When I woke up, Hugo and Rachel, who had been notified, were there. I realized I had forgotten to call Rachel when I left the house. "Where's Laura?" I hoped it was a dream, but Hugo gestured that she was gone. "How can this? Why?" Neither Hugo nor Rachel said anything, but their eyes,
"Cynthia was right,"
seemed to say. I thought the same. For a while I was almost catatonic. I cried looking at Laura's things, cried watching her favorite cartoons, and cried remembering her in everything I did. At first Hugo didn't say anything, but gradually he began to sigh audibly.
"She's so morbid,"
and mutter under his breath. Rachel too started to nag me.
Hey, how long are you going to be in a daze? Housework is Cynthia's job, isn't it? Could you please get it together?
I'm sorry. I knew I shouldn't be like this, but my heart was heavy, and I just couldn't function as efficiently as before. Yet, as they say, time heals. About 6 months later, I started to manage the daily chores normally again. Hugo did cry a bit at the funeral, but he wasn't exactly what you would call a doting father. He preferred playing games over spending time with Laura, which is why she wasn't very attached to him. So, maybe Hugo wasn't as heartbroken because he didn't feel as much a sense of being a parent. But who else will mourn for Laura, our daughter who only lived for 4 years, if not her parents? Yet, about a month after Laura's death, Hugo returned to his usual spendthrift self, enjoying shopping and browsing the web. When Laura died, both Hugo and Rachel looked at me as if it was my fault.
"It's Cynthia's fault."
But they didn't say anything, probably because they weren't as heartbroken about her absence as I was. I didn't expect them to grieve the same way, but I wished Hugo, as a parent who lost a child, would have been more supportive. Rachel, on the other hand, went back to her routine within a week, shopping and going out with friends, laughing as if Laura had never existed. When Laura was born, Rachel frowned upon seeing her face.
She looks more like Cynthia than Hugo. We can't expect much from her future.
She often ignored Laura and seemed reluctant to interact with her, probably not feeling any special affection. She didn't shed a tear at the funeral. Their attitudes have always been a point of contention for me. Almost a year passed since Laura's death. Seeing Hugo and Rachel happily shopping, I felt an indescribable frustration. They never talked to Laura's picture. I wonder how they can act so normally. I felt that we just couldn't understand each other. Then one day, Hugo and Rachel unusually suggested we go out together. "Where are we going?"
"How about somewhere with fresh air to change our mood? Cynthia, you've been just going between home and the supermarket since Laura passed. That's why you're so down."
I've been worried about you too, Cynthia. You've been so down.
Worried? You, Rachel?
Of course. Cynthia is the wife of our dear son. I've been trying hard for your sake.
I couldn't really believe that, but a part of me felt a little happy to hear it.
"How about hiking for a change?"
Hiking?
"Going somewhere with fresh air might lift your spirits. I want Cynthia to feel a bit better."
You really thought that?
"Of course, I'm your husband. It's natural to worry about my wife."
But you didn't seem that down.
"I was holding it together. If I got down too, the house would become too gloomy. So let's go hiking."
I wondered if they really cared, but it was hard to believe.
"Laura would want you to be happy, Cynthia. Think of this as a tribute to her."
That moved me. I knew Laura wouldn't want me to cry forever. That's something I've always known in my head. But I've never hiked before.
Don't worry, even I can climb it.
"It's more like a light hike."
Well, if Hugo and Rachel insist.
Great, I'm looking forward to it.
And so I agreed to go hiking with Hugo and Rachel. We drove to the foot of the mountain and started our ascent. It was a sunny day and many people were around, which felt reassuring. But as we reached the midway point, the crowd thinned. Despite being told it was a beginner's course, I was surprised by the roughness. Yet Hugo and Rachel walked with ease, familiar with the terrain.
Hey, let's take this path.
Huh?
Yeah, it looks less crowded. Let's go that way.
But shouldn't we follow the path everyone else is taking?
It's fine, I've been here before and know the way. This path is straightforward and you can't get lost.
If Hugo says it's okay, then it must be.
Trust me, that's a really scenic spot just ahead. Cynthia, you'll be amazed.
Before finishing his sentence, Hugo started walking down the path, followed by Rachel, so I reluctantly followed them. But the further we went, the path became more rugged, almost like a trail for animals rather than a proper path. Wait, are you sure we're on the right path? Can we really get through here?
Don't worry, we'll reach a wider path soon. Just keep up.
Hugo and Rachel continued, seemingly confident. Rachel, now 60, was surprisingly nimble, walking more effortlessly than I was. Soon, they were far ahead, their figures intermittently visible through the dense foliage.
Wait! Don't leave me behind here!
Hurry up, we'll run out of daylight.
Hugo's voice echoed from the distance. I hurried but couldn't catch up. Their heads, once visible, were now out of sight.
Hugo? Rachel?
I called out in fear, but no reply came. As I hurried forward, I lost sight of them completely. I didn't know which way to go. What should I do? I was lost, with the words stranded echoing in my mind. This can't be happening. Maybe I should have stayed put, thinking Hugo would come back for me. But as time passed, neither Hugo nor Rachel appeared. There was no sign of anyone approaching. Knowing I couldn't just stand there, I started walking again, filled with fear. My anxiety grew. I couldn't tell which way was which. I decided to retrace my steps, but even finding my own tracks on this unmarked path was a challenge. I felt like I was getting deeper into the wilderness. Panicking, I stumbled several times, each fall draining more energy. Soon the surroundings began to darken. My anxiety intensified. If it turned night, I wouldn't be able to descend. The temperature dropped as evening approached. It was late March, but the nights were still cold, especially in the mountains. What would happen if I had to spend the night here? Exhausted, I collapsed against a large tree. I can't go on. I voiced my despair. Thoughts of this being the end of my life crept in, my consciousness fading. In my dimming awareness, I heard a voice I had longed to hear.
Mom? Mom!
Shocked, I opened my eyes. There was my dear Laura. Laura? Is that you? Laura smiled at me. I must be in heaven, I thought hazily. I reached out to hug Laura, but she seemed to slip through my arms, flying away. Laura?
Mom, over here!
Laura turned and started running. Wait! I reflexively stand up to follow Laura. I reflexively stood up, feeling strangely energized, despite my earlier exhaustion. This couldn't be the real world. But if it meant holding Laura again, I didn't care if it was a dream. When I thought of that, I naturally felt motivated. I felt invigorated and chased after Laura.
Laura, wait!
As I called her name, Laura turned back, smiling. It felt like playing tag with Laura, a joyful feeling. Before I knew it, I had reached the foot of the mountain, and Laura was gone.
Laura, where are you?
Laura was nowhere to be seen. Had I just seen an illusion? Then someone shone a flashlight on me.
Are you okay?
I got lost on the trail.
Are you hurt?
Thank you, I'm fine. My family must be waiting for me. I headed down the parking lot at the foot of the mountain, but our car wasn't there. Had Hugo and Rachel left without me? No way! As I stood there dumbfounded, I saw a faint image of Laura where our car should have been. Laura! I ran towards her, but my body passed right through. I couldn't embrace her. Laura looked sad, as if she wanted to tell me something. I felt she had a message for me. Then I realized something was very wrong. If we had been separated, they would have reported me missing. The area should have been in uproar, but no one seemed to be looking for me. The parking lot was silent and deserted. Did Hugo and Rachel not even try to find me? What does this mean? Laura must have appeared to show me this. I went to the station, took a train home, and noticed people staring at me curiously, but I was too preoccupied to care. I quietly opened the door and peeked inside. I could hear Hugo and Rachel's voices, unnaturally cheerful. I sneaked into the next room and observed them through a gap in the sliding door. They were drinking and laughing, unconcerned that I hadn't returned.
We did it! No more of her depressing face.
Wonder how she's doing now. Shivering in the mountains?
Just thinking about it makes me laugh. Cynthia is so slow. She'll never make it back. It's going to be extra cold tonight.
Imagine her alone and cold out there.
We'll tell the people she ran off with another man, then file a missing person report.
When will we get the insurance money?
It'll take a few years before she's declared legally missing.
If only her body was found, we'd get it faster.
Let's say she called from the mountain. Then they'll find her sooner.
My son is so clever. Hearing this, I trembled with anger. I couldn't believe they had planned this. I listened to their conversation, unnoticed. I was a fool to ever think of them as family.
Make sure to cry at the funeral. You didn't shed a tear for Laura.
Well, I wasn't sad. Laura wasn't cute. She looked just like Cynthia.
I never wanted kids. They're just annoying.
Hearing this, I burst open the sliding door. The two of them looked at me in surprise when the sliding door suddenly opened. They were shocked to see me.
It's out!
Wow! Hugo backed up against the wall. Rachel covered her head with a throw. I realized that the noise was as if I had seen a ghost. I must have looked like a ghost, covered in mud, torn clothes, and scratches. It may look exactly like a ghost. I'll haunt you! They shivered in fear.
It wasn't me! Blame Hugo!
What? You agreed! Mom was the one laughing about how cold it must be. It's not my fault. Haunt her.
Hugo, selling out your own mother? What if I get haunted?
Hugo, Rachel.
I'm sorry, please go to heaven.
They were beyond reason. I wonder if it's so easy to pass away to the afterlife. Things don't go the way these people think. Go to the other side? I'm not about to make it that easy for you. I'm still very much alive.
What?
Huh?
See, I still have legs. I lifted my foot to show them, and they looked utterly bewildered, clearly not expecting me to be there. They must have seriously thought that they sent me to the afterlife. What was your plan? Leaving me in the middle of the mountains?
I just wanted to fulfill your wish.
My wish?
You wanted to see Laura, right? I thought I'd sent you to her. It was out of kindness.
What? I was speechless. Did they really think that excuse would hold up? I informed them that I had heard their entire conversation. Their faces turned even paler. Of course I'll be divorcing Hugo. I can't stay here. Not with my life on the line. Too bad you won't get the insurance money.
That's...
I recorded your conversation. I'm taking it to the police.
What?
I'll consult a lawyer and you'll face the consequences.
What consequences? Cynthia's fine, right? We didn't commit any crime.
I won't let this go unpunished. Perhaps it was seeing Laura that gave me strength, or knowing their evil intentions. but I felt a newfound power within me. I wasn't going to lose. Rachel, still unable to believe I was alive, peeked out from under her throw at Hugo and me, still trembling. On the contrary, I want to ask myself, do I look that much like a ghost? I didn't bother with their stunned faces and began gathering my belongings to leave the house. I had no destination in mind, but managed to find a no-frills hotel. I was grateful for the savings I had hidden before marriage. Hugo and Rachel didn't know I had savings. They would have demanded it if they did. The next day, I visited the police and a lawyer's office. Abandoning a healthy adult in the mountains might not constitute abandonment, but intentionally leaving someone in a dangerous place was illegal. Some punishment was inevitable. My lawyer said I could claim damages for emotional distress. My recording of their conversation led to their arrest for fraud and assault, resulting in a criminal sentence. The divorce was finalized, and I claimed compensation and damages. I had secretly saved money, just as Wilson advised, slowly transferring small amounts from our living expenses account to another one. Even though the savings were from after marriage, all payments were made to me, leaving Hugo with nothing. I found a place to live and a job. I'll never overcome the grief of losing Laura, but I cherish the happy memories we shared. As long as I have these memories, I won't be lonely. Laura saved my life. She wanted me to live. I'm the only one who can cherish her memories. I'm not alone. Laura's smiling face is always with me.
Mom, I love your smile.
Laura often said that, so I'll keep smiling. The smile Laura loved, and move forward.
Hey, Dad! We've got a package here! They're asking for your signature! As a delivery worker, I found it endearing to watch a child leading their father back to the front door at a delivery location. Could you please sign here? I offered the father a smile and handed over the document for him to sign. However, the sight of me turned him stark white, and he became completely still. My name is Holly. I'm 30 years old and work as a delivery driver for a shipping company. I was born into a fairly affluent family thanks to my father's prosperous business. But rather than follow in my family's footsteps, I chose to branch out and find work elsewhere. While out on deliveries, I happened to cross paths with Darren, a man a couple of years my senior, working at one of my regular stops. He courted me, and before long, we were wed. Today, we are parents to a beautiful son, and we lead a blissful life together. My parents never pushed me to step into the family business. But before our wedding, my father questioned Darren. "Are you considering taking over our family enterprise?" Darren's response was a firm, "Absolutely." As a result, Darren quit his job before we got married and shifted to my family's company to train and eventually take over. Darren had always been a soft-spoken, serene man, but I noticed a change in him after we married. He started belittling my job and vented out his anger towards my father, his current employer, on me. Believing in the good-hearted man he was before we tied the knot, I hoped he would regain his former self once things at work stabilized. Hence, I decided to give him some breathing room. My father had informed me that Darren was having a hard time improving his performance in his role as the external sales rep. I thought that might be adding to his stress. But instead of improving, his behavior only escalated for the worse. Chores that we should have been dividing between us were slowly piling up on me, with him excusing himself saying he was exhausted from work, and he gradually withdrew from helping raise our child. Feeling partly responsible for asking him to switch to my family's business, I found it hard to confront his worsening attitude. In the end, I found myself frantically juggling housekeeping, childcare, and my work duties. Eventually, my personal grooming as a woman took a back seat. Seeing this, he would mockingly comment on my looks, saying, Hey, it seems like ever since you became a mom, you've stopped putting as much time into your appearance, like not bothering with your hair and skipping makeup. What's up with that? He also began comparing me to a female colleague, saying, "At work, there's a woman your age who's raising 2 kids, and she puts on makeup and keeps her appearance neat every day. I wish you could take a leaf out of her book." Isn't that woman you're talking about, Nicole, in the administrative department? She lives with her husband's parents at their home, right? And both of her children are in elementary school. She wasn't working when her kids were little. The clerk, Nicole, that Darren mentioned, had left the company when her kids were born. But guess what? She's back now, thanks to her in-laws stepping in to help with taking care of the kids. But when I told this fact to Darren, he deflected the conversation saying, "My parents live far away, and if we were to live with your parents, I'd have to see my boss all the time, wouldn't I? Living together with your parents is impossible." On his days off, he would frequently leave the house saying, "I'm going to a business seminar." I was the only one managing all the household chores and taking care of our son. It was really exhausting. Between juggling work and childcare during the week, and then trying to tackle the mounting housework on my days off, I was just getting more and more drained, both physically and mentally. I could have reached out to my parents for some help, but I was worried that I might somehow put Darren in a difficult spot at his work, so I found it hard to ask for that extra support. But there's only so much a person can take. Amidst such days, I eventually collapsed from all the stress and overwork. It happened at my workplace, and when they couldn't reach Darren, who was my emergency contact, they reached out to my mother, who rushed over. "Are you so swamped with work that you're actually passing out from exhaustion? Does Darren even realize you're working to the point of collapsing?" I think he does, but he's also pulling long hours trying to secure his position in the company, so I can't really ask for his help. You could have told me. I worried that if Dad found about all of this, it could somehow impact Darren's position at the company. After taking some time to consider my words, my mom finally spoke up. "From now on, talk to me before things get this bad." The following day, I got a message from my father. "We need to have a talk. Come home without letting Darren know." When I returned home in response to his message, my father told me, "Frankly, Darren isn't improving in his role at all. At this rate, it's not just about being ready to take over. He can't even handle his current responsibilities. We can't trust him with the company if this continues. And he's been attending external seminars, learning things that don't align with our company's ways. Whatever the reason, he isn't following the advice given by our staff. If there's no improvement, we can't keep accommodating him. We could introduce him to other companies if he's not willing to make changes. It might be better for him to find a place that suits his style," he said, leaving me in deep thought. I decided to have a serious talk with Darren. That night, I brought up the topic with him. "Did you know that I passed out yesterday? The doctor said it was due to overwork. I can't handle all the housework, childcare, and my job alone anymore. So I need you to help around the house and with raising our child." "But I'm already stretched thin trying to secure my position in your parents' company. I'm already at my limit." The moment he heard my story, Darren retorted in an angry tone. The kind Darren I used to know seemed to have vanished completely. "Dad told me that your performance isn't improving and you keep butting heads with the company's methods instead of following them. He said there's no way you can be his successor at this rate. Maybe you should focus more on understanding our company before attending all those business seminars. If you can't do that, he suggested you might be better off leaving the company, and we'll do our best to help you find a job that fits you. So, what's your plan? I was hesitant to mention all this, but given his refusal to listen, I finally brought up the company issue. As soon as I mentioned the company, Darren seemed lost for words. Then he glared at me. Are you trying to control me by bringing up my work? Is this some kind of threat? That's not what I meant. So all my efforts so far have been for nothing, haven't they? I would have been much better off staying at my previous company. But in reality, you're not improving at all, despite receiving a high salary, right? I thought he would explode at my words, but surprisingly, he became quiet. I've been trying to figure things out, but it's not going well. Starting tomorrow, I'll change my approach, pay more attention to your dad's advice, and strive to improve. I'm sorry. Even though his sudden change in attitude felt strange, all I could reply was, whether that's true or not is for my father to decide. I hope you can earn his approval. After that, Darren started to chip in a bit with the housework, and I began to leave our son with my mother, which greatly eased my burden. But one day, when I visited my parents' house to leave my son, I happened to run into Ellen, who works at my father's company. It seems she had come to pick up some documents my father had forgotten. I encountered her just a few feet away from my parents' house. Seeing me, she made a slightly awkward expression. We made a small talk for a while, but then she said, I'm sorry, but I thought you should know. This might not be my place, but there's something I need to tell you. Actually, I moved recently and saw Darren coming out of a woman's house in the neighborhood. When I mentioned it to my husband, he said that Darren might be her boyfriend as he often visits during the day. I was speechless at this revelation from the company employee. Continuing on, she said, But that woman has a child. My husband said that the child calls Darren Daddy. But it doesn't seem like they're living together, so my husband thought it was a complicated family situation. I was stunned by what I heard. I somehow managed to drop off my son with my mother and get through my workday, but honestly, I couldn't focus on anything and ended up leaving early. I decided to talk to my mother about it. After hearing my story, my mother was furious, but she said, It could be a misunderstanding. You should hire a private investigator to look into it thoroughly. I can provide the money if necessary. Let's not involve your father in this. Using my own savings, I hired a private investigator. The results came back quickly. Darren was in a relationship with a barmaid named Vicky, and they even had a 5-year-old daughter together. The investigation also revealed why his sales performance wasn't improving. Apparently, under the guise of outside sales, he was visiting Vicky's house and spending time with his other family. Swallowing back tears, I decided to take action. Armed with the evidence from the investigator, I hired a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases and started making arrangements for a divorce. With the documents prepared by the lawyer, I decided to deliver Darren's belongings when he was visiting Vicky's house. When I rang the doorbell at her house, a little girl who was probably their daughter came out. My heart sank seeing this innocent child, but I calmly said, I have a delivery. I need a signature. Could you please call your mom or dad? At this, the girl shouted, Hey, Dad! We've got a package here! They're asking for your signature! And went back inside, dragging Darren out by the hand. Seeing me at the entrance, he went pale stammering,
Why?
"Just need a signature right here," I said, flashing my most charming grin before handing over the divorce papers and his belongings.
It's a misunderstanding.
He tried to argue, but just then, Vicky, suspicious about his delay, poked her head out from the living room. "Oh, and this must be Vicky?" I asked Darren.
Who's this lady? Do you know her?
She made a puzzled face and asked. "Nice to meet you. I'm Holly, Darren's wife. Excuse the uniform, I'm on the clock. I'll be claiming damages from you too, so please go through these documents," I said and handed her the documents for claiming damages. To the still petrified Darren, I said, "It's time we finalize this divorce. You need to acknowledge your daughter too. Oh, and Nicole. I'll also be claiming damages from her." I had found out from the investigator that he was also fooling around with Nicole, his company's clerk. "Nicole's married too, huh? Her husband should hear about this, and my dad will definitely hear all about it." At this point, Darren looked like he was about to faint. The one who stopped him was Vicky. "What's going on? I knew you had a wife, but you have another mistress?" She shouted and began to confront Darren. The sudden argument, or maybe just the tension, set Vicky's daughter off crying. I decided to leave them to it and headed home. I filled my parents in on the situation and moved me and my son's things to their place. Later, I met with my lawyer, filed for divorce from Darren, and sought alimony, child support, and damages from both Vicky and Nicole. Nicole's husband reached out to me. We agreed to share the cost of the investigation, and I handed over the evidence to him. Apparently, Darren had been spending his weekdays at Vicky's and claiming he was at business seminars on the weekends while actually spending time with Nicole. Turns out, he didn't follow the company's guidance simply because he was easily swayed by a young internet entrepreneur. And surprisingly, in the midst of this chaos, it was revealed that Vicky was also involved with another married man, which just made things even more complicated. But I chose to focus only on getting what was due to me. In the end, I was granted the alimony and child support I sought, and the divorce was finalized without any hassle. Darren seemed to have started a new life with Vicky and their daughter. My dad was ready to sack Darren, but I convinced him otherwise. Eventually, due to their misconduct at work, Darren and Nicole received pay cuts and demotions. I wanted him to stick around because I figured the others at work who knew about his affair and subsequent divorce wouldn't exactly be friendly towards him. I thought it would be better for him to suffer in a hostile workplace. I was right, and Darren, now just a regular employee with a significantly reduced income, couldn't stand the hostile environment and quit a few months later. According to Ellen, who lives near Vicky, the sound of Darren and Vicky's daily arguments can be heard all over the neighborhood. Although Darren and Vicky were living together, it was clear that their relationship was extremely sour. Then I got a message from Darren pleading for a reconciliation. "I've realized how important you are to me, Holly. Ever since then, Vicky has been blaming me for being broke, and she's raising that I should pay the damages claimed by the other man's wife. You are all I have, Holly. Help me. Let's start over." What are you talking about? To begin with, if Vicky's daughter is 5 years old, that means she was born 2 years into our marriage. There's no way I can forgive a man who's been lying to me for over 5 years. We're never getting back together again, I said bluntly and hung up the phone. I blocked his number after that. In the end, Darren and Vicky's arguments only intensified, leading to a noise complaint from the neighbors and their daughter being taken in by Vicky's parents. Darren found another job, but it paid much less, and with damage claims coming from all directions, he couldn't afford the rent and had to move. I don't know whether they broke up or are still together after that. I apologized to my parents saying, "I'm so sorry for bringing such a person into the family and causing trouble for the company." But my father said, "Honestly, I was already done with him before you even talked to me. I only tolerated him because he was your husband. I think my leniency might have ultimately hurt you. I should be the one apologizing." I thanked Ellen, who initially tipped me off about Darren's visits to Vicky's. "I was worried that I might negatively impact your marriage, so I didn't say anything. But I'm glad things have worked out in a way you can accept." After that, I started working full-time instead of part-time, and I'm living a new life with my son. Of course, the alimony and child support payments, which were supposed to be made in installments, were already behind schedule. So after discussing with my lawyer, we're considering taking Darren and Nicole to court. The whole ordeal was a tough battle, but thanks to my parents' unwavering support, things seem to be going smoothly. The damages I claimed from Vicky were paid for by her parents, so I guess we'll contact Darren and Nicole's parents to see if they can pay for them as well. While it doesn't seem like everything will be resolved soon, I hope to tie up the loose ends quickly for the sake of my son and me. I felt guilty for taking my son's father away from him, but my parents shower my son with love, and my mom comforted me by saying, "Do you think your son would want a father like Darren? In other words, it's better not to have such a father at all. You just need to love him twice as much." Thanks to her, I was able to let go of that guilt. For the sake of my supportive parents, and most importantly for my son, I want to give my best in my future life.